Hi, my name is Zach Anderson, and today I will be going over Computer Network Lab number 2. So without further ado, let's begin. So we see here the lab's going to go over two parts, TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, and then a user datagram protocol. So we can scroll down here and begin part 1. So we see that, and this has already been done, but we see that we need to go to this link to retrieve the ASC2 copy of the Alice in Wonderland, store it somewhere on our computer. Next, we hit this link, it'll take us to this screen, and then we need to upload this file after we begin the Wireshark packet capture. So since we have done all of this, we are good to move on and begin answering the questions. Here we begin with the first two questions, which are asking about the IP address and the port numbers of both the client computer and of the UMass EDU. So after we have filtered our search using the TCP, as we see in this top corner here, we can then find our source and our destination. So based on whether it's sending or receiving, we can see that the source of the client computer is going to have an IP of the 20.189.173.14, and that the Mass EDU is going to have the IP of a 192.168.0.16, and we see that that is designated on this side over here. Now, in order to find our port number, we are just going to click for more information here. So we see that we both have the source port and the destination port, and these are ultimately our two port numbers, but just dependent on whether we're receiving or not. So we see that the computer's port number is 443, or the client computer, and that the Gaia Mass, the destination port, is 59,645. Now we can begin by answering questions 1 through 9, and here we have our Wireshark window, so let's begin. So question 1, asking what the sequence number of the SYN segment, so we can actually just come up here, and it is designated by this SYN title card right here. So we can just simply look right next to that and see that the sequence number is 0, and it is identified by this SYN little title right here. For question number 2, we see it's asking the sequence number of the SYN ACK segment, and what is the value of the acknowledgement field in the SYN ACK segment, and then how did Gaia determine that value, and what is the segment that determines. So it's actually right below it. We see that it is designated by the SYN and the ACK title card side by side here. So we see that there's a sequence number of 0 and an ACK number of 1. And this was determined by making the ACK number 1 because this was shown that the SYN was being acknowledged, moving it from 0 to 1. And then, like I just previously mentioned, it was identified both through the SYN and the ACK flags. Moving on to number 3, what is the sequence number of the TCP segment containing the HTT post command? So this was a little tougher to find, but it'll just take a second of scrolling here. As I designated here, it is in packet 242. So all we have to do is come down here, find the post. We can double click on this and see that we have our source port, we have all this other information, but what we're looking for is our sequence number, so we can find 152.453. Next, we're good to move on to question number 4. So this one was a bit wordy, but kind of asking about a lot of the time segments and sequence numbers of the first 6. So we can find a lot of these. I'm not going to go through them individually, each bit by bit, because it would take quite a while. But, I mean, for the sequence numbers, we can see we have a 0, a 0, a 1, a 1, and just kind of goes through. We see we get to a 232, a 1461, and then if we go back down to 242, well, you'd see the bigger one. So yeah, a lot of these times, we can see all the times here. They're all recorded in the assignment answer sheet. So let's just move on to question number 5. What is the length of each of the first 6? So again, we can just go back. Let me scroll over, make sure this is correct. And we see that the proper length, so we're going to include the HTT post command as our 6 in here. So we have 66 twice, a 54, a 285, a 1514, and then that 242 line, the post command, is going to have a value of 535. So we can just go down and double check right here. So 6, what is the minimum amount of buffer available? And then does the lack of receiver buffer space ever throttle the sender? Oh, pardon me. So this is just asking for basically buffer space. So we can determine this by looking at the window size, so the minimum advertised window, and we can see this in packet number 23. I think I have recorded, 23. So we can see this is designated by the WIN, W-I-N, which is the window title or the header, and we see that this would come out to 262.144. Number 7, are there any retransmitted segments in the trace field? No, there is not. And what I looked for, it was confirmed by checking like sequence numbers for duplicates and ensuring that no segments were retransmitted. So pretty simple, just more of an observatory answer. Number 8, we see how much data does the receiver typically acknowledge in an ACK. So this, oh my goodness, excuse me. So it would acknowledge all the data up into the ACK number. So an acknowledgement number, it acknowledges the receipt of all the data up into that number. So it basically is acknowledging the next byte of data to be expected. So this is basically confirming all the data up until the sequence number of the ACK, if that makes sense. A little hard to explain, but hopefully that does the trick. Number 9, the final question here is, what is the throughput for the TCP connection? So the overall answer I got was 103,749 bytes, and we do need to use this. The equation that I used was the total data transferred divided by the total time. So after we input all of that information and just did some calculations, we end up getting that answer. And then there is no number 10, but on my answer sheet I did put it because it was just displayed in the lab. And this was basically asking us to go here, stream graph, we want the Stevens graph. So hopefully this is showing on the screen recording. But we can see that there is a very irregular movement pattern, and it was basically asking us to compare how it would go through. And usually you would want linear smooth increase, but we see that there's some congestion avoidance behavior here with an irregular growth pattern. So that is the primary difference. And with that, that wraps up all of part 1 for lab number 2.